My family forgot my birthday 3 times because of my sick sister. But when I told them I felt invisible, they called me selfish. So I left and built a family that actually values me. I'm 20 years old. I work at an electronics store doing night shifts, and I've basically spent my entire life feeling like a ghost in my own home. It's not that my parents are bad people, you know? It's just that, well, my sister Madison needed so much attention because of her health problems that I simply stopped existing to them. And the worst part is they forgot my birthday 3 times, 3 fucking birthdays, and when I finally exploded and told them how I felt, they called me selfish. So here I am, living in another city, barely talking to them, and trying to figure out if I was ever really part of that family, or if I was just the backup kid they kept around just in case. I guess I should start from the beginning, when everything was normal, or at least what I thought was normal. Madison was born when I was like a year old, so basically we grew up together. But for as long as I can remember, she was always sick. She has this chronic condition that affects her bones or something. I don't know exactly all the medical details because, ironically, nobody ever explained to me properly what my sister had. I just know she spent a lot of time in the hospital, needed constant physical therapy, and my parents lived in permanent panic mode over anything that happened to her. And look, I get it, okay? I'm not saying my parents shouldn't have taken care of her or that she didn't deserve attention. Obviously, she deserved it. She was my sister and I loved her. Like, that was never the problem. The problem was that there was literally nothing left for me. When I was a kid, let's say I was about 6 or 7 years old, I remember my mom was always running around, taking Madison to medical appointments, and my dad worked overtime to pay for all the treatments and medications. I stayed at my grandparents' house practically every day after school, and honestly, my grandparents were the only good thing about my childhood. My grandma made me cookies and asked me how school went, and my grandpa taught me how to build toy trains in his basement. They made me feel like I mattered, like I was special, even though my parents were never there to see me in school plays or at soccer games, where I played as a substitute because I wasn't very good. But at least I tried. The first birthday they forgot was when I turned 8 or 9. I don't remember exactly. What I do remember perfectly is that day my parents took Madison to a concert by some children's singer she loved, and I stayed at my grandparents' house again. I waited all day for them to arrive, thinking maybe they had planned a surprise or something, but when they finally got there, like at 10 at night, my mom just said, "Oh, Tyler, honey, happy birthday. I'm so sorry, we'll make it up to you tomorrow." The next day, they gave me a $5 gift card to a video game store and said to pick whatever I wanted. $5. It wasn't even enough to buy a full game. But okay, whatever. I was only 8 years old and I thought, well, maybe next year will be different. Spoiler alert, it wasn't different. My 10th birthday, they forgot completely. Like they didn't even mention it that day. I came down for breakfast hoping they would at least say happy birthday, but my mom was on the phone coordinating something for Madison, and my dad had already left for work. I spent the whole day at school feeling like shit, and when I got home, nobody had said anything yet. It was like 3 days later that my mom suddenly remembered and said, "Oh my God, Tyler, your birthday." And they went to the supermarket and bought a generic cake, one of those that have horrible plastic flowers on top. It didn't even have my name on it. It just said, "Happy Birthday" in half-melted blue letters. We sang. Well, they sang, while I stood there feeling uncomfortable. And that was it. No gifts, nothing special. Just this sad cake they probably grabbed from the discount shelf. By the time I turned 12, I wasn't even expecting anything, anymore. That day, Madison had an appointment with a new specialist or something, and my parents were out all day. My grandma made me my favorite cake. It was chocolate with raspberry filling. I still remember it. And my grandpa gave me a train set that probably cost him more than he could afford on his pension. They were the only ones who made me feel special that day. When my parents got home late at night, and my mom gave me a quick hug and said, "Happy birthday, honey. Sorry, today was so chaotic." And that was literally it. But look, the forgotten birthdays were just a symptom of something much bigger, you know what I mean? It was everything. Every day of my life felt like being in the background while Madison was the main star of the show. If I got good grades, it was, "Oh, that's nice, Tyler." But if Madison managed to walk to the bathroom without help, it was like she'd won the Nobel Prize. If I wanted to talk about my day, I had to wait until they finished discussing Madison's symptoms or her upcoming medical appointments. If I needed a ride somewhere, it always depended on whether Madison didn't need anything first. And the worst part is she knew it. She knew it perfectly and used it to her advantage. There was this time, I think I was like 15 years old, when Madison had a tantrum. She was 14, but acted like she was 5, and destroyed my video game console because she was mad about something that didn't even have anything to do with me. She threw it on the floor and stomped on it until the screen cracked and the controllers were in pieces. I had saved for months from my part-time job mowing lawns to buy that console. When I showed my parents what she had done, you know what they said? Madison is going through a difficult time. She's in a lot of pain lately. Try to understand her. They didn't even offer to replace it. Nothing. They just took her to her room and consoled her while she cried, and I stood there holding the pieces of my console in my hands, feeling completely invisible. Fast forward to when I was 17, almost 18. Things were getting worse and worse at home, and I basically lived in my room or at my grandparents' house when I could. One day, I don't know where I got the courage. I suggested to my mom that maybe we should go to family therapy. I expected her to get angry or ignore it, but surprisingly, she said yes. I think she was also exhausted from all the tension in the house, although obviously her idea of tension was that Madison was stressed, not that I was basically emotionally disappearing. At first, therapy seemed promising. We had this therapist, Dr. Chen, I think her name was, and she was pretty good at establishing rules and structure. We started having a family game night every week, where supposedly we were all going to participate equally, and for a moment, I thought maybe things were going to get better. We lasted like 3 sessions like that, with everyone making an effort, and I was starting to feel like they finally saw me. But then Madison started getting jealous. Yeah, jealous that the attention wasn't 100% on her for once in her life. In one of the therapy sessions, she started crying and said she felt like Mom and Dad were neglecting her because they were trying to pay more attention to me. Can you believe it? After years, literally years of being the center of the family universe, 2 weeks of me getting some attention, and she was already accusing them of neglect. And Dr. Chen, who was supposed to stay neutral, started focusing on Madison's feelings, asking her how she felt, validating her emotions. While I sat there thinking, wait, are we really doing this? The next sessions were basically about Madison again. About how she needed to feel safe. About how her health problems meant she needed extra attention. About how it was hard for her to see the family doing things she couldn't do easily. And my parents fell for it completely. They started canceling game nights because Madison said she was too tired or something hurt. We went back to the same pattern as always, with everything revolving around her and me in the shadows again. I think what really destroyed me was when my grandma got sick. It was like 3 years ago. I was 17. She was literally the only person who made me feel seen, who made me feel important, and suddenly she was in the hospital with cancer. I spent as much time as I could with her those last weeks, sitting by her bed in the hospital, holding her hand while she slept. She died on a Tuesday afternoon, and I swear something inside me died with her that day. She was my anchor, my safe place, and without her I felt completely adrift. After the funeral, my grandpa just shut down. They had been married for like 50 years or something, and without her, he didn't know what to do. His health deteriorated quickly, and like 6 months after my grandma died, my grandpa had to move to a nursing home in another city. Because he needed constant care, and my uncle, who lived in that city, was the only one who could supervise his care. I went to visit him before he left, and he gave me all his toy trains. He said, "Tyler, you're a good kid. Don't let anyone make you feel less than what you're worth." I cried the whole way home that day. Without my grandparents, the house became unbearable. I was in my senior year of school and just wanted to survive until graduation so I could get out. But before that, we had a therapy session that was basically the end of everything. I had been holding everything in for months, maybe years, and that day I just exploded. I told my parents exactly how I felt. How I had spent my entire life feeling invisible. How they had forgotten my birthdays multiple times. How they were never at any of my school events. How Madison had destroyed my console, and they didn't even blink. how the therapy that was supposed to help had become another platform for Madison to get attention. My parents' response was to get defensive immediately. My mom started crying and said they were doing the best they could, that I didn't understand how hard it was to have a child with special needs, that I was selfish for not seeing everything they sacrificed for our family. My dad said he understood. I felt neglected, but that I had to be more mature and understand that Madison needed more from them than I did. And Madison, oh Madison, called me a selfish asshole and said I was trying to make them feel guilty for taking care of her. She said I had always been jealous of her, that I was a bad brother, that she wished she was an only child so she could have mom and dad just for herself without me complaining all the time. That was basically the last time I really tried to communicate with them. I completely shut down after that. I spent my days going to school, working at the electronics store, and then locking myself in my room. I avoided family dinners, avoided any interaction that wasn't absolutely necessary. My parents tried to talk to me a couple of times, but it was like, what for? I already knew how it was going to end. Everything always came back to Madison, her needs, her feelings, her life. Dr. Chen suggested in the next session that maybe we should switch therapists, that maybe she wasn't right for our family dynamic. My parents agreed, but I told them I didn't want to continue with therapy. What was the point? I had already tried to talk, tried to explain, and nothing had changed. Instead, I started planning my exit. I graduated from school, got a full-time job at another electronics store in a city like 3 hours away, and moved 2 weeks after my graduation. My parents seemed surprised I was leaving so quickly, but they didn't do much to stop me. My mom cried a little and said she was going to miss me. My dad helped me pack my stuff into my old car, a 2008 Honda Civic I had bought with my own money, and Madison didn't even come out of her room to say goodbye. I drove those 3 hours feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness, like I could finally breathe, but also like I was leaving behind any chance of having a normal family. The first few months in my new city were lonely but liberating. I got a small apartment, more like a tiny studio, but it was mine. Worked my shifts and slowly started making friends at work and at some places I hung out. I talked to my parents maybe once a month. Superficial conversations where they asked me how I was and I said, fine, working a lot. And they told me about Madison's medical appointments and how she was doing. They never really asked about my life, about whether I had made friends, about what I was doing in my free time. It was like talking to strangers who casually knew my name. And then came my first birthday after moving. I turned 18. That day I worked my normal shift, got home, and waited. I waited for a call, a text message, something, nothing. Not my mom, not my dad, not Madison. Nothing. I thought, okay, maybe they're busy, they'll call later. But night came, and still nothing. I went to bed that night, feeling exactly like I had felt when I was 10 years old, and they forgot my birthday completely. Except this time it hurt more because I wasn't there for them. To at least pretend they remembered days later. But the second birthday after moving was different because I wasn't expecting anything from them anymore. I turned 19 and organized a small gathering with my friends from work. We went to a bar. Well, I couldn't drink legally yet, but they let me in. Ate chicken wings, played pool, and I had a good time. It was genuinely a good day. But that night, I don't know why, I decided to call my parents. Maybe part of me still had hope, you know? My mom answered, and we talked for a few minutes about random stuff, and then I said, by the way, today's my birthday, and there was this horrible silence, and then she said, oh my God, Tyler, I'm so sorry. We've been so busy with Madison's appointments that I lost track of time. Happy birthday, honey. I thanked her. We ended the call, and I sat there in my apartment feeling this mix of anger and resignation. And now we get to the birthday from like 3 weeks ago. I turned 20. This time, I didn't even think about them honestly. I had planned a big party at my apartment, invited like 15 people, bought food, decorations, drinks, because now I was finally legal. Everything. My friends arrived. We put on music, played board games, someone brought karaoke, and it was probably the best birthday I've had in my life. Around midnight, as I stood there in my apartment full of people who really cared about me, who had made the effort to come, who had brought gifts and cakes and who genuinely seemed happy to celebrate with me, I realized something. These were my real family. Not my parents, who never had time for me. Not my sister, who always saw me as an annoyance. But these people. I chose, and who chose? Me. The next day, I checked my phone. 0 missed calls. 0 messages from my parents. It was officially the 3rd time they forgot my birthday. But this time, it didn't hurt like before. Instead, I felt this strange clarity. Like when you finally accept something you've been denying for a long time. They weren't going to change. No matter how much I waited or how many times I gave them chances, Madison was always going to be their priority, and I was always going to be the son who existed in the margins of their lives. Now, I'm here. 3 weeks after that birthday, and the truth is, I feel more at peace than I've felt in years. I'm still in very low contact with my parents. Like I send them a message every 2 months asking how they are, but I don't expect anything from them anymore. I visit my grandpa at the nursing home when I can, although the trip is long and he sometimes doesn't even recognize me because of his dementia, but I do it because he was one of the few people who made me. I feel important when I was a kid. I started therapy on my own a few months ago, with a therapist who actually listens to me and doesn't try to justify my parents' actions. We're working on my feeling of not being enough, on this fear I have that people will forget me or sideline me, on learning to set healthy boundaries. It's hard. Some sessions I leave feeling worse than when I went in, but I know it's necessary. My friends here have become my chosen family. Jake, the guy who works with me at the store, calls me his brother and is always inviting me to do things. Sarah, a girl I met at a random book club I joined, sends me stupid memes every day and always asks how I'm doing, really, not just superficially. Marcus and Tom, 2 guys from my building, play video games with me on weekends and never forget my birthday because they have it marked on their calendars. These people, who don't share my blood, have given me more love and recognition in 2 years than my real family in my entire life. Do I feel guilty sometimes for distancing myself from my parents and Madison? Yes. I'm not going to lie. There are nights when I wonder if I'm a bad son, if I should have been more understanding, if my situation was really that bad or if I was exaggerating everything in my head. But then I remember the 3 forgotten birthdays. I remember all the times I tried to talk and was ignored. I remember how they made me feel selfish for simply wanting to be seen. And that guilt fades away. I did what I had to do to survive emotionally. I don't know what's going to happen in the future with my family. Maybe someday we'll have a real conversation where they actually listen and acknowledge how they treated me. Maybe Madison will mature and realize she wasn't the only one suffering in that house. Maybe my parents will finally see that having a child with special needs wasn't an excuse to completely neglect the other child. Or maybe none of that will happen, and we'll just continue being strangers who share a last name and some blurry memories from when I was a kid and still had hope of being part of that family. What I do know is that I'm building something better here. I'm learning to value myself in ways I was never taught at home. I'm surrounding myself with people who see me, who hear me, who remember my birthday without me having to remind them. And although there are still days when I feel sad about the family I never had, there are also days when I look around my small apartment, see the pictures of my friends on the wall, and feel incredibly lucky to have found my real people. Last week, one of my friends asked me if I missed my family. I told him the truth, that I miss the idea of having a family that cares about me, but I don't miss the reality of what my life was like with them. He told me that made sense, and then changed the subject, asking if I wanted to go with them to a concert next month. And there, in that simple moment, I realized I already have a plan. Family. It's just not the one that shares my DNA, and that's perfectly fine.